is all of this stuff on the table?
I am just refurbishing some wing mirrors for the SL. I won't be long.
This is a table for eating on.
This video is all about the wing mirrors on the early R107 SL Mercedes. Now, these wing mirrors came in different styles, different shapes and styles depending on the year of the car. So if you are trying to replace a wing mirror, especially for an early SL, good luck, because they're very difficult to come by, but make sure you actually get the right one. For example, here are two right-hand wing mirrors, but you can see that they are slightly different. This one here has this triangular piece of chrome in, whereas this one doesn't. This here is the mirror on my 1976 280 SL, and it is has a different outer casing. The innards are slightly different, although the actual lever I think is the same, but the mirror is a different shape and also a different length, so beware of that if you ever need to buy mirror glass for your SL. If you've got an early 107 SL, you'll need different mirror glass. In the later cars, 1980s SLs, they actually had electric mirrors on one side, so it is very important that you get the right mirror for your car. In this video, we're going to be showing you how to take one of these mirrors apart and how to restore it. This bit here on our right hand side mirror is broken, and I'm hoping to take this bit off our spare left hand mirror and transplant it onto the right hand mirror. The glass of the mirror here actually comes straight out from the mirror. It clips up. You see this red plastic, it just clips onto that ball and then it slides out this way. Now, we've had this one out before, but and yours might not come out quite so easily, but you can see that those runners there simply slide on that fork, so you pull it up and then out to get it out, and then once you've done that, there are just two screws holding the outer casing on. But be careful when you take them off, because these screws should have two tiny little washers in there. We will be replacing these screws with stainless steel ones. That one didn't have the washer, but hopefully this one does. As I say, it's very easy to lose those washers when you take it to pieces. You can see that's the washer there. Once you've taken those two screws out, this outer casing will just lift off. If you do have an earlier SL, in fact, even if you've got a later SL and you've never taken the wing mirror to pieces, here's one good reason why you perhaps should, because all of this corrosion here, if you don't address it, it'll start to go through to the chrome side of the mirror and you'll start to get bubbling through on the chrome, and that is very expensive to address. If you catch it at this stage here, you can just lightly sand that off and then spray the inside of this with something like the Eastwood rust encapsulator to stop that corrosion dead in its tracks. Once you've got the outer casing off, you can just take this rubber section here, and then we are close to be able to disassemble this mechanism here. Now, when you come to take this piece off, do be very careful not to tear it, because whilst these are still available, this little piece of rubber here costs about £57 from the SL shop. It's no longer available from Mercedes. This section here is riveted onto the side of the case, but if you look closely, there is a circlip here which should allow you to get this whole section off. The trick is to try and get this circlip off without losing it or breaking it. Easier said than done. I think that one's probably knackered, to be perfectly honest. And once you've got the circlip off, there's a thin washer. Then there's a circlip on the other side as well. In theory, we should be able to just separate this now. So, and this end bit here, if we take this screw here out, this is the screw that allows you to adjust how stiff the adjustment mechanism is. Here is the offending piece, or the broken piece. Now, if you're a good fabricator, I suppose you could drill that out there, just put a small nut and bolt in and refabricate this, but it would be quite tricky to do that, I think, especially bearing in mind you've got this sort of round ball joint here. So we're just going to take it, or try and take it out the other mirror. Now we have to try and get that out, and you can see that this has obviously been in there for 50 years. There's half a jungle, so I think we'll go in there with a bit of penetrating oil and then see if we can pull this mirror out. As I mentioned, this mirror is a little bit different because it has this here. So it has this additional screw in there, which you need to take out before you can get this off. Now I'm hoping that this additional bit does not mean that the actual mechanism inside is different, but we'll soon find out. I'll give this a little burst of plus gas down there. Finally. The good news is that these are a similar shape, but in actual fact this is on the reverse side. So on this one it's on the outside, on that one it's on the inside. This is our disassembled wing mirror here, and I think what I'll do is actually hand this to the powder coaters. We can see the first signs of corrosion there, and obviously the paint is all scratched off here. Now I could just paint this myself, but I think we'll get a much better finish if we take it to the powder coaters. The casing here will go over the inside of this with a wire wheel and then just spray the inside with a silver rust encapsulator, and that will protect it and stop it from bubbling through. On the other wing mirror, which looks fine, this lever here is really stiff, so I suspect when we open this up it'll look similar to this, and there'll be a lot of rust on the internal mechanism. So we'll take these off to the powder coater, and while they're at the powder coaters we will de-rust. We'll put all these little rods here in a rust bath, de-rust them, and then maybe paint them with rust encapsulator, and then we'll get a set of wing mirrors pretty much looking like new. This here's the mirror glass backing plate for this kind. You can see once again it's a little bit rusty on the back, so we've got a choice of just putting this in a rust bath, which will take off all the remaining plating here, or just sanding that off with a wire wheel and just dusting over it with some rust encapsulator, which is probably what we'll do. The mirror glass is only about £10 on eBay, and that will be self-adhesive. So what we'll do is when that mirror glass arrives, we'll sand this off and then we'll stick it straight on there, stop that rusting again. So we've gone over these with a variety of wire wheels and a Dremel tool to get rid of all the loose flaky rust. Next we're just going to mask this up, cover these holes, and then we'll spray the inside of this and this side here with silver rust encapsulator. We've just gone over these with a couple of coats of the Eastwood rust encapsulator. That gives it a beautiful finish and should protect it from corrosion for a good few years to come. This here is the broken mechanism. I've just put that in a rust bath consisting of the built amber deox crystals. I just want to make sure that the actual metal here isn't going to dissolve in that rust bath, and that little ball joint there isn't going to dissolve either. It seems to be absolutely fine, but it's as well just to check those things. You don't want to put bits of classic Mercedes in a rust bath only just have them dissolve by the next morning. We're just going to go over this little mechanism with a wire wheel first. These little bits seem to be riveted together and don't come apart, and otherwise we'll take the whole thing to pieces. We've got the majority of that rust off with a wire wheel. This will now go to rust bath to get all those difficult to reach areas. To be honest, there's not too much wrong with this mirror, but once we powder coat the other one, this one will look terrible. Plus this lever is not moving as it should, so I suspect the internals are rusted, and we will try and take the thing to pieces without breaking too much of it and see if we can clean it up. This should just pull out, but of course it's probably rusted solid in there. Sometimes you can just carefully get a screwdriver and twist it. There's a good chance you'll break the glass or damage the casing when you do that. That does not want to come out of there, and you can see why. It's totally corroded in there. And we'll put a little bit of plus gas WD-40 down there, see if we can loosen it up and try and pull it out. Just about finally there. Wow, That did not want to come out. Whether or not we can actually get that rusted screw out is of course another matter. It's a good idea before you strip the screw just to put some penetrating oil in there and leave it overnight. These two screws are rusted solid, and if you do get any movement, my advice would be to rock it back and forwards, keep putting penetrating fluid in. Now when they're this rusted, you do not want to break them inside this little alloy post if you can possibly avoid it. So we're going to put a little squirt on there. We've got a tiny bit of movement in here, and what we're trying to do is work that into the threads. But there was no rush. You feel it tightening up. It's back in there with the penetrating fluid without getting it on your wife's garden furniture. After a long battle, I think we've just about got this screw out, hopefully without it snapping and without it knackering the threads. We have ordered new stainless steel screws for this, but just remember it also has this little washer as well, which we've also ordered some of these as well. So finally we should be able to get that out of there, and that should allow us to then clean up. This can go off to the powder coater. We can clean this up, put it in the rust bath, and that should be almost done. So on this side is just a circlip, but on this side there is a circlip and a very thin spacer washer. The helper has got that circlip off, revealing the spacer washer. In actual fact, it looks like there's two spacer washers on this one. So we'll go over it with now what we do is go over with this here with the drill, and that will heat it up and get rid of the rust. So, okay. These have been in the rust bath overnight, and most of that rust has gone. You can see that these little rods here do actually come out and only held in by those washers and circlips. Once again, we'll just mask this up and dust this over with some rust encapsulator to protect it in the future. You could also run over that with some engine oil as well, although I suspect that would just attract an awful lot of dirt in the wing mirror. We gave these a couple of coats of rust encapsulator, and then we're just dusting over them with some Rust-Oleum gold paint just to give it that OEM look. Just arrived the day after we ordered it from these guys here, ACCU. We've got all these screws, washers and circlips we're going to need to refurbish those wing mirrors. We've got cheese head screws, raised head screws, pan head screws, little 3mm circlips. I'll leave a complete list of the sizes and quantities you'll need in the description. These wing mirrors came back from the powder coaters in super quick time, and they look amazing. It cost us £20 per wing mirror. We can now put everything back together. Just before we put this back together, we're just going to lubricate all the joints. We'll do the ball joint with grease, and we will do these joints here with silicone, just so they don't react with the paint. It's important to do this when your wife has gone to yoga, so she does not see you using grease on the dinner table. These little springs have been in a rust bath, and we've gone over them with a Dremel tool just to get any rust off them, and then coated them in a little bit of oil. These here screws are the M312 cheese head screws, and they will go into this little piece here, which we've just painted with the Rust-Oleum gold. Let's give it an OEM look. These little circlips are 3.2 times 2.7mm E-clips stainless steel. The washers we are using are M4 times 10mm. They're 0.9mm, so they're thicker than the washers that came off, but all of these spacer washers that came off, despite being in a rust bath and just sanding them down, are in pretty bad condition. So we're just going to use one of those washers there with a circlip. These outer casings are held on by two M4 10mm Phillips raised head screws. You're going to need two of these little serrated washers with teeth on the outside. Now, if you can't reuse the ones you've got, you can actually just get some M4 10mm serrated washers and bend the teeth up slightly. This is looking 10 million times better with stainless steel fittings and powder coated. This will last another 50 years. Obviously, if my wife was here, she would ask, what on earth are you doing, wasting your time doing this? But it's not a waste of time doing a job properly. The mirror's held on the car by three of these M4 10mm Phillips pan head screws, but before you put the mirror on the car, you'll put a seal on. There's two types of seal you can get. You can get these seals here from MB Classics in Germany, or the original ones are enclosed like that. But as I say, they are over £50 if yours is damaged or missing or you want to replace it. If I had had the slightest inkling how expensive and difficult it was to get hold of mirror glass for older SLs, I would have taken an awful lot more care. Now, I've ordered some mirror glass off eBay for a mere £10, but I'm not holding out much hope. And in fact, I can see that that is just way too big. You can see that that just not fit at all, and it's not the right shape to fit in there either. So as expected, that doesn't fit, and we're going to have to start to try and hunt down this mirror glass, or maybe we can find somewhere that can make it. You can get the mirror glass from mbclassics.de in Germany. The right hand side is €24.99. The left hand side is cheaper at £17.85, but bear in mind MB Classics in Germany have a minimum order size of, I think it's €165 to ship to England for us. This here is the mirror on my 1976 280 SL, and the mirror is longer and it's a slightly different shape. So when it comes to buying mirror glass, you just need to be aware that the early SLs have shorter mirrors and a different glass size. Once you've put that on, the mirror just hooks through like so. Once you have secured the mirror with those 3 screws there, there should be a trim piece that fits over like so, and that just clips in. Now the clips are invariably broken and the bellows are invariably missing or damaged like that. Those trim panels are available from SLS in Germany, as too are the little bellows. They also sell the window mirror glass, but not the right hand side for some reason. And last but not least, you have the actual handle which slides on. Now it's a good idea to put a little bit of grease on there just to help this slide on. Once it's slid all the way on, there is or should be a little locking piece like that that locks into the end. Now what I've noticed on this car is that my metal bar is slightly bent, which makes it almost impossible to put that in, so I'm going to have to take the whole thing to pieces and straighten it out, but you get the general idea. My advice would be, before you slide that plastic piece in there, put some grease in there, because once that's in, it's a very tight fit, and you'll find that to get it out is extremely difficult. You normally have to tap it out with a watchmaker screwdriver or something like that. And now that we've lubricated everything, you can see that this mirror tilts up and down like that, and there is also some in and out movement like that. You may find on your car everything is rusted and solid, and it no longer does that. I'm going to leave this video here. The next video on this SL will be replacing the soft top roof. I've got a new soft top. I've never actually replaced a soft top roof before, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And on our SL55, the next thing we need to do is replace the valve cover gaskets and the supercharger oil, and then that car is pretty much tickety-boo.